when people ask you workforce housing, what does that even mean?
Yeah, well, workforce housing has a definition. So we'll first start there. So the Urban Land Institute defines workforce housing as housing that's available for folks that make between 60 to 120% of the area median income. And think about this as housing that's designed for many essential workers, so firefighters, police officers, teachers, right? Those folks that are so essential to our communities. This is the housing that is really geared and designed to provide for those folks. So if you start to put the numbers to it, just to kind of let you know where that is in Jacksonville and show you how JWB plays a part in these types of neighborhoods, the median income in Jacksonville is about $75,000. So putting that number 60 to 120%, that takes you to housing that's available for folks who make between about $45,000 and $90,000. And that's where we have lived for 18 years. We have focused on that neighborhood, those types of neighborhoods. And we'll certainly get into the reasons why, but beyond just the wonderful things that it can do for wealth building and the investing angle, it's fun to support those essential workers. And I think many people miss that fact when they think about owning rental properties. There may be a negative stigma that comes about it, but you're serving those who serve our communities to the greatest extent.
Makes sense, GC. I think of what we talk about a lot on the show of like supply and demand. And I think about, there's two sides of that, right? There's the supply of the housing, but there's also the supply of the residents. So obviously at that income level, at that kind of like purchasing power, you're talking about people starting their career. You're talking about maybe young families that are trying to get established and just like have normalcy. You're talking about some very respected careers of like nursing and teachers and the military and people that we really, really, really appreciate out here. And then I think about the macroeconomy of Jacksonville, right? The fact that we have this like very healthy medical sector that employs a lot of that. We have a very healthy military population, right? Like kind of, I've started to realize that we're like the third city when it comes to like the military industrial complex, right? People talk about Virginia and the DC area, they talk about San Diego, and then they talk about Jacksonville, but they talk about that much less. I've just started to notice that.
Yeah, it's good. It's interesting. I've never really thought about us being the third city there, but you name those two and you often hear of those. I mean, we have two military bases that provide a significant amount of jobs here locally, and a third one that is just on the outskirts of our MSA. So yeah, there's a lot of need to support housing in that what we call the missing middle. The missing middle is that area of housing where those essential workers and those who make in Jacksonville between $45,000 to $90,000 a year, they're facing significant challenges, especially due to home price affordability. And one thing that we haven't had the opportunity to shed as much light on as we like is like you all, by investing in single family rental properties, are a part of that solution right there.
Yeah. Let's talk about the other side of the coin, the beachfront housing, the luxury homes that people would think about renting. Who lives in those?
Well, those who earn more money. Right. And so your high income earners are living out in neighborhoods with the last name Beach if you're in Jacksonville, right? Think about those areas. And an easy way to understand what type of housing you're in beyond just the way it looks or maybe feels driving through a neighborhood is to put some numbers to it. And so the median home price in Jacksonville right now is about $355,000. And so if you are, call it 50% above that, you're at around maybe $550,000, give or take, somewhere around there, right? That would be your upper middle income housing in Jacksonville. And as you go up and up and up, you are in more and more of a luxury type of a neighborhood. And if you're out by the beaches, you get into the millions here in Jacksonville.
And I think of people that have moved down here from New York that are in these like kind of like positions, and they rent these homes, whether they're deciding to stay or not, those kinds of different things. It feels like it's a different, renting out by the beach versus renting a workforce family home. It's a different buying decision, isn't it?
You mean from the renter's perspective?
From the resident's perspective.
Yes, definitely. Well, I mean, if you want to live out by the beach, depending if you're going to rent or buy, you're going to have to pay a lot each month. And, there's not as much rental demand out by the beaches because people who live out by the beaches or in these luxury neighborhoods generally can afford to actually own their own home. And they understand that by buying their own home, it is the best decision financially over the long haul. And so if they have the wherewithal to do that, they do that. So inherently, there's less rental demand in those neighborhoods. And, and this is a concept I'm sure we'll get to, which is that the rental demand in those luxury neighborhoods is not as strong, which leads to a lower rent to price ratio. And for the price of the home, the rents are just lower percentage basis out in the luxury neighborhoods compared to workforce housing, where in workforce housing, there is significantly higher rental demand. And people might not have the wherewithal to be able to buy their own home. And so they're going to continue to rent. And that's one of the basic tenets of risk mitigation and decreasing risk that attracts JWB clients to workforce housing neighborhoods.